What's poppin', fellas? We've got UFC 293, another pay-per-view back this weekend, and I'm beyond hype, especially because of that press conference that just wrapped up yesterday. Strickland took aim and fired at Izzy. Manel Cape took aim and fired. It was kind of crazy. And just before we get into breaking down the fights, out of 381 fights this year so far, I've had 243 dubs, 138 losses. I'm almost two for one in my main event picks with a 64% win rate, which isn't the best, but it's far from the worst, especially on YouTube, so I'll take it. Now, the star prospect of the night, for me, hands down, has to be Carlos Ulberg. He's just probably the only prospect that has any importance on the card. He's the only prospect in general, I feel like, besides maybe Blood Diamond, who's 0-2 in the UFC, so yeah. Carlos Ulberg, star prospect of the night, easily. And then for the show stealer of the night, I feel like this one probably is going to come down to Tyson Pedro versus Anton Turkalj. They're both just wild in there. Tyson Pedro likes to strike, but he'll go to the ground and he'll be looking for subs or chasing a finish. And Anton Turkalj just goes for it in every fight. He's a wild man. And then for the fighter that's in the oven, it's Tai Tuivasa. Let's be real. If he loses this one, his career's never going to be the same. If he wins it, he puts himself back in the mix at heavyweight. It's one of those types of fights. And it sucks that we see him in this spot because he was just fighting for a belt not that long ago, even though it was interim, or close to fighting for a belt, I'm sorry, but you know, this is how the cookie crumbles. Moving on, we've got Kevin Jusay taking on Kiefer Crosby. Kevin Jusay is part of City Kickboxing, so automatically you're going to look at this and you're going to look to think that the UFC is trying to set him up with a favorable matchup. But to be honest, these first three fights, they're all going to be City Kickboxing men, and I'm not confident in any of these fights. I only think that one of them will be able to get the job done, and I think it will be Kevin Jusay. He's a little bit too clean on the feet with his counter-striking. He's a bit slower and he has a weird, unorthodox pace, but I think it'll be enough to get the job done. Kiefer Crosby is just a banger. Then we have Shane Young taking on Gabriel Miranda. Shane Young looks like he moves in mud, and that's a huge problem for me when I'm going to be picking a featherweight fighter, especially when you're choosing to pick against somebody that's debuting in somebody like Gabriel Miranda. And Gabriel Miranda is slick as hell once he gets to the ground. Something I feel like this fight is, no matter what, going to do. Shane Young is better on the feet, and he can keep him at range if he really sticks to a game plan, but at some point the fight's going to hit the mat, and I don't know if he can survive when he's on the ground. So I'm going to trust Gabriel Miranda to pick up a sub. And then we have the last CKB member in the first three fights, Blood Diamond taking on Charlie Radke, or Charles Radke, whatever it is. Mike Mathetha is not that great, man. He came into the UFC way too old, especially as a welterweight. He's like 35 or something like that, maybe even older. He's just too far past his prime, and you can't be coming into a sport like this without having any ground game and expecting to do good for yourself at all. This is a matchup where I feel like the UFC is trying their hardest to give him a win, like they've been doing. Maybe not with Jeremiah Wells, but you know what I mean. They tried in his last fight, and he just couldn't get it done. And I feel like you can only have so much help from the promotion and from the team you train with. So unfortunately, I will be going with Charlie Radke. I think it's going to hit the ground, and he'll be able to find a submission or just kind of dominate for 3 rounds on the ground. Next up, Nasrat Haqparast taking on Landon Quinones, who lost in the Ultimate Fighter this last season. And to be honest, he lost to somebody that was kind of a bum and couldn't even make it to the octagon himself. So I don't know how he got signed and got this fight. Nasrat Haqparast used to be this type of fighter in this position. He's the fresh one in the octagon. But he's not that guy anymore, and he's been tested a little bit. He has lost a couple times now as well. But at the same time, he's picked up good wins, and the competition he's lost to aren't the worst. So I'm going to go with Nasrat. Next up, Jamie Mullarkey taking on John Makdessi. This is a total mismatch. Jamie Mullarkey is younger. Would have been better even if John Makdessi was younger and closer to his prime. Jamie Mullarkey is just leagues above John Makdessi as a fighter. So without a doubt, I'm picking Jamie Mullarkey by whatever he wants. He could find a submission. He most likely will find a TKO with pressure and that switch stance hook combo that he loves to throw. I really just have a hard time seeing John Makdessi win this at all. He did look good against Ignacio Bahamondes, which was surprising, but two completely different fighters. Moving on, we got Jack Jenkins taking on Chepe Mariscal. I trusted Chepe debuting against Trevor Peek just like a couple months ago, and he was an underdog there. Same underdog he is in this fight against Jack Jenkins. And he got the job done, but this was a completely different style matchup. And let me tell you why. Chepe is good at breaking people down on the feet with pressure. He's going to stay in the fight wherever it goes. But the person he was fighting is only good at just sitting in the pocket and trading crazy blows and like throwing standing hammer fists and shit. And I knew that wouldn't be able to last for 3 rounds. Now, Jack Jenkins, on the other hand, will pick at you at range a lot sharper and use his leg kicks way better. So I gotta go with Jack Jenkins. He's just too clean of a striker. Then we got Carlos Ulberg taking on Da Un Jung. This is a weird matchup. Again, another huge mismatch because Da Un Jung is coming off of like 2 or 3 losses, and Carlos Ulberg is on a 4-fight win streak. And he's been sparking everybody that he's been fighting. Da Un Jung's chin looked a little bit questionable in his last couple matches, and Carlos really just looks like he's kind of found himself. The Kennedy Nzechukwu fight was probably like a blessing in disguise for him because he probably would have thought that he could just come in here and blast anybody had he gotten Nzechukwu out of there, but he didn't, and he got knocked out in his debut, and ever since then he's just looked like an absolute stud. And we don't see too many people coming up in the light heavyweight division that you say that about, so I'm going to trust Carlos. I like him. Now on to the main card. Tyson Pedro taking on Anton Turkalj. I don't know why the odds were so far apart in favor of Tyson Pedro. Now I know that it's like a pick'em fight. If not, Anton Turkalj is the favorite, which is how it should have always been. Anton isn't bad, and his only 2 losses are to some really good competition. People like Jailton Almeida and Vitor Petrino, who's undefeated. 2 freakish Brazilians. Now, he's gotten lucky in the fact that he's not drawing a freak of nature grappling Brazilian, but he is drawing somebody that has great grappling, way better striking, and is just more polished on the feet and in the octagon under the bright lights. I'm going to have a hard time picking Anton Turkalj when Tyson Pedro is coming in here with his map advantage, being from Australia. Yeah, no, I got to side with Tyson Pedro. The striking on the feet is just too crisp, and I think it's going to make the difference. Then we have Justin Tafa and Austin Lane 2. The first fight ended prematurely because Austin Lane was trying to take out Tafa's fucking eyes, gouging him out of his skull. It was crazy. But judging by how that fight was starting, with Austin Lane slamming body kicks into Tafa and just looking generally bigger and like he had more of a cage presence than I expected, I will be siding with the underdog in Austin Lane here. I think he's going to fight his fight, and I don't know if we're going to find a finish in this one, surprisingly. Even though it's at heavyweight, I actually do think this will go to a decision with Austin Lane leading the dance, tiring out Justin Tafa with the body kicks in the first round, looking for his takedowns where he has them, trying to use the ground control or cage control to his advantage. Just keeping any type of time you have where Justin Tafa is going to be damaging you out of the window. Then we have the co-main event, the feature fight of the night, Manel Kape taking on Felipe Dos Santos. It was supposed to be Kai Kara-France. This card would have been way crazier if it was Kai Kara-France, because at the press conference, Manel Kape went for Kai's throat. Then Sean and Izzy were going back and forth, and Izzy sees that Kape is going at Kara-France's throat and decides to stand up and start trying to chirp down Manel Kape. And then Manel Kape switches his target to Izzy and starts telling him to shut the fuck up. Tells him to shut up with his cartoon porn edition. Like, it was hilarious. And seeing a flyweight stand up to the middleweight champion of the world with all these like heavyweights and shit around him, it was just hilarious. It made me way more of a fan of Manel Kape than I already was. And when it comes to his fight, he's fighting somebody that's undefeated, but they're just too young in their career. They have way too little experience compared to a 24-fight veteran in Manel Kape. 24 fights to 7 fights, regardless of if the kid's undefeated or not, I'm going to have to side with Manel Kape. He's also just too crisp on the feet. If it goes to the ground, I actually do see this being a little bit more competitive than people would probably realize. I don't think that Felipe Dos Santos has been researched enough or been given his credit enough, except for by super hardcores that are studying this shit for like betting picks. But either way, I don't think he's ready for this type of test. And I'm going to have to side with Manel Kape, probably by a second round knockout. I think he's going to be finding his shots on the feet in the first. He's going to hurt Felipe, but Felipe will be tough enough to survive and make it to the second. But the damage will just already be done, and by the time the second round comes around, I think Manel Kape is going to pick his right shots, land something flashy, and then call out Kai Kara-France on the mic right after, stir up that drama. I want to see that fight. Co-main event time, Tai Tuivasa taking on Alexander Volkov. Tai's only chance at winning this fight is landing some like wild leg kick that hurts Volkov bad, and then whipping an overhand and a hook in combo, something along those lines. Like, he has to throw big and throw crazy. Because if you try to have a technical kickboxing fight with Drago, with his 36 fucking heavyweight wins and his damn near 7 feet of stature, it's not going to be a fun time for you. And we've seen this time and time again, unless your name's Derek Lewis and you're like prime Derek Lewis. When you have that, I'm just going to keep fighting until the last second and then land a bomb because that's what I can do type of vibe. Like, if you're not like that, which nobody else is but prime Derek, then you're not going to beat Alexander Volkov in a striking matchup. The last person that did beat him like that was Cyril Gane, And Ciryl Gane is a different striker. And even then, it was still kind of close. You could argue it was a 3-2 fight. It was still obviously Ciryl Gane's win, but Volkov didn't look like completely outmatched. And I could see them running it back and it being a different fight. So long story short, I'm going with Alexander Volkov. I think he's going to knock Ty out probably in the first round, because Ty's going to come at him like a bat out of hell, trying to get his back and trying to get off of this losing streak, put on for his crowd, and it's going to be bad. So I'm going with Alexander Volkov. Now we got the main event, the Chinese champion taking on Sean Strickland. I like that Izzy's rocking the red shorts for this one. It looks kind of clean. He says it's the red mist now. And prior to this, he's been, went with the blue trunks and the green ones. I like that he's like one of the only fighters that seems to care about that type of shit. And I'm sure a lot of the fans don't, but a lot of us do. We like seeing that type of shit, and I enjoy it personally. Wouldn't mind if Sean came in here with some colored trunks. Let's get to the fight. Sean Strickland, at his best, in my opinion, actually makes this fight super competitive. The problem is Sean Strickland is not going to be his best in this crowd. With this event, with the magnitude of the stage that he's on, it's the first and probably the only time he'll ever be having an opportunity like this. Literally his 8 Mile moment, and I don't think he'll be able to live up to it. We see how Sean gets. He's very obviously socially awkward in a lot of situations. And when it came to the press conference, you could tell the second that thing started. He's just looking around. He's all antsy. He's like rubbing his hands together. You could tell that it was getting to him a little bit. And once he's able to talk, you get a mic in his hand, he can start flowing and get some of those nerves out. But then you see him and Izzy face off again. And once again, Sean just looks like he's not really able to handle the moment. A lot of people in the comments are going to go and be like, oh, you've never seen a Sean Strickland fight. This is just how he is. To an extent, yeah, he's always socially awkward, and when it comes to the face-off, he can't really look his opponent in the eye. But it felt like even extra this time around with Izzy. It kind of, to me, felt like, okay, now I know this press conference moment is over. The only thing left is stepping in the cage with this guy, and I'm not confident that I'm going to beat him. I don't think Sean is confident. Every time you see him on an interview, he's not talking about how he's going to go out there and win this shit, and how he's always known he's going to win. No, he talks about how Izzy is a tall, lanky kickboxer who could knock him the fuck out, and if he wanted to, he should wrestle, but he probably won't. He'll do the man dance. Like, that's Sean Strickland in a nutshell. In a nutshell, he's just a different type of retarded, and it makes it so I don't really trust him for this fight. So if you guys fuck with my predictions and my picks, give me a sub. We just hit 900, and I'm hype about that. I'll catch y'all.